In this video, we're going to look at how you can evaluate a numerical expression. Evidence-wise, we're going to first figure out what even is a numerical expression. We're then going to use PEMDAS, which you are probably familiar with, to actually evaluate one. Finally, use math reasoning as your authority. If you're not sure of whether you got the right answer or not, go back through, check to make sure you followed your order of operations. There shouldn't be any question about that in that case. Got our learning experience there. We're going to do an example and a you-do. The you-do will be a little bit different this time, so I'm going to explain how that works when we get there. So what even is a numerical expression? Well, the definition that we're going to use is that a numerical expression is a math expression which contains numbers and at least one operation. Quite often, and what we're going to be looking at today, is going to have more operations than just one. But as long as it has some operation, it's a numerical expression. So all 5 of these expressions, for example, are numerical expressions. They all have numbers. They all have operations. We have some addition. We have some multiplication, subtraction. We have an exponent over here. We got stuff inside of parentheses. We actually call this sort of a thing that's inside of parentheses a quantity, in case you need that as a word. But these are all examples that you might use. So let's talk about the order of operations. And it looks like my S has been cut off slightly. So first off, just to refresh your memory about what the order of operations are, we have 6 of them. The first one is, of course, parentheses. Also, technically that includes brackets. If you've got something inside of brackets, do those first as well, but parentheses otherwise. We have exponents. We talked about those in the previous, one of the previous videos. That's if you have some base and some exponent. It's just repeated multiplication. Speaking of which, the next one is, of course, multiplication. Sometimes we do multiplication different ways. Here are some of the ways you might see multiplication. Sometimes we just use dot. Sometimes our parentheses actually show us multiplication. Sometimes we use an X and sometimes we use a star. D is, of course, division. That's either going to be a fraction or a division sign. With multiplication and division, it actually doesn't matter which order you do them in. If division comes first from left to right, you're going to start with division and then do multiplication and then maybe division again. Doesn't actually matter. But for our PEMDAS idea, we put multiplication in front. A is for addition. Really, the only thing you're ever going to see with addition is a plus sign. And since you can't see the S there, I'll just write this fully. The S is, of course, subtraction. And really, all that you're going to see with that is a subtraction sign. Now, just like with multiplication and division, addition and subtraction, as long as you do it last, it doesn't matter what order you do it in. If you want to do the subtraction first, as long as you're going from left to right, it doesn't matter. And we're going to see that in the example here in a sec. So take a second, write that down if you don't have it down already. One of the best ways to remember what order this goes in is to remember the phrase, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." It's a really, really famous way of remembering the steps for PEMDAS and what order they go in. Again, the M and the D and the A and the S get a little bit weird because it doesn't really matter which one you do first as long as you do from left to right. But sometimes you have a division before you do multiplication. Sometimes you do subtraction before you do addition. It depends on the problem. Speaking of problems, let's look at this one that we have here. We have 4 squared minus 0.25 times the quantity. That just means the things inside the parentheses or brackets. 1/2 plus 4 times the quantity, 5 minus 1. So this is kind of complex looking. This is also one of the examples we had on the previous slide. Let's go through it together. And please make sure that you're writing this down as we do it together, as that'll help you understand what's going on. So the first thing we need to do is we need to look at where we have parentheses. Well, we have some brackets here, and we have some parentheses in here. Since we've got these brackets, we're only going to look at this section that's in here first. And then we're basically going to do another set of PEMDAS, which means we again have to look at the parentheses. So the first thing that we actually need to do is what's inside these two parentheses. 5 minus 1 is easy enough. That's just going to be 4. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite the entire problem. And I would very much suggest doing this, especially when you're learning how to evaluate a numerical expression, simply because it gets kind of complicated and you don't want to miss a step. I would every time recommend writing out each step, and I'm actually going to do each step in a different color just to really highlight that. So we did our first step. We did some parentheses inside of our brackets. We still have to be working inside of this parentheses / brackety area. And next, we don't have any more parentheses other than this thing. We have no exponents inside there. We do have multiplication, which is right here. So this is just going to be 4 times 4, which is going to be 16. We're going to add these to 1/2. And again, we write out the entire thing again. We haven't even done anything with the stuff on the outside of our brackets yet, but that's okay. We're still living inside of bracket land, so we still have to do stuff in here. But now the only thing that's left here is dealing with our addition. So that's the last thing that we need to do in here. And that's just going to give us 16 and a half. And I'm going to keep it in the brackets. Really, I could make these parentheses at this point if I wanted to, but we're going to keep rewriting it like so. Next, we have to look at what we have here. We do have some parentheses, but nothing inside of there needs to be worried about. We do have exponents, though, so let's do that next. 4 squared is going to be 16, and I'm going to start running out of space here if I'm not careful. And then we can rewrite the rest of this. So yeah, 16 minus 0.25 times 16 and a half. Next, we have to think about our next part of PEMDAS. We've done our exponents. Now we've got a little bit more multiplication to do. I'm actually going to write this over here since I'm running out of space. So we're just going to draw this over here. We now have 16 minus, and I'm going to skip a couple steps here and just say that this is 33 eighths. If we wanted to write that as a mixed number, we could say that this would be 4 and 1/8, which might actually be useful. So let's rewrite it like that. Again, I'm not going to go through how we got 33 and 1/8, but it's just this 0.25 times 16 and a half. Let's try it as a mixed number so it's a little bit easier to deal with. And then all that we have left is some subtraction. We've finished everything else here. So we'll end up with 16 minus 4 is 12, but then we also have the 1/8, so we have 11 and 7/8. Now, that was kind of a process, and we did have to show a lot of work, but it's really important to do. If you do not show all of that work, you are likely going to make an error somewhere. By showing each step, you're far more likely to get this correct on your first try. All right, so now that we've gone over an example of that, I would keep that handy in case you need it. But you're going to do a you do, and this time you get to choose. So we got 3 different levels of difficulty. The one that we just did is more of a level 3. So if that one made sense to you, go ahead, try level 3. If you need something that's going to be a little bit easier, try level 2. And if you need to work on something fairly basic with just some integers to begin with and start on, try level 1. You can do more than one level if you so choose as well, but you need to choose at least one of them. Ready, Go. So things to remember, really the main thing to remember is to follow your order of operations. We have parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and then subtraction. Again, the multiplication, division, and addition and subtraction, it does not matter which order you do them in, as long as you go from left to right. Parentheses and exponents you definitely have to start with. Additionally, we have some different ways of showing multiplication. We've got like 4 different ways. And parentheses also include things like brackets. So be aware of that. Keep that in mind as you're working through them. And then let's look at our suggested practice problems for today. So we have 5 suggested practice problems for you to try today. The first one, you have Brady and Brooklyn. They both work through their numerical expressions there. And they get 2 different answers. I want you to figure out who is correct. You want to write a justification, a CER, about who is correct and why you know that. Then there are 4 more problems that are just numerical expressions. Evaluate them. Make sure you look at PEMDAS, look at the first example that we did together, and you should be able to get through them. Good luck.